Welcome to the Brain from Knowing to Doing podcast. This is the series on the brain and AI. And I'm delighted to be speaking today to the very renowned Byron Reese. As you'll see throughout the series, the central question in the series is how can we use AI to help the brain use AI more effectively? And we will come to that at the end of this discussion. But I had the enormous pleasure of meeting Byron online through the Next Collabs community that I'm a member of. And we're going to go through a couple of his books and about his main ideas in with regard to a lead up to that central question. Byron Reese is an Austin-based prolific author, entrepreneur, and futurist with a deep interest in how technology positively reshapes human experiences and societal structures. His 6 books have sold 500,000 copies in 13 languages. But the broad impact of his books and ideas have had a global influence at the highest levels on applying technology and AI to society. Let's take a quick snapshot before we start of 3 of his books. In The Fourth Age, which is his book where he presents a comprehensive background on the intersection of AI, robotics, and human existence, and he sets the stage for a profound transformation, kind of akin to a new epoch for humanity. In his book, Infinite Progress, that's his futuristic book about how the internet and AI will help end ignorance and many of the most pressing human problems. And in a third of the 6 that I'll just mention, in which I love all of them, in We Are Agora, he outlines humanity as a collective superorganism, illustrating how individual actions and societal structures contribute to a larger, interconnected whole. He currently serves as the CEO of JJ Kent, an AI company that he started in 2020. Wonderful to speak to you today, Byron.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So let's begin, if you don't mind, with the half-life of a job, as 50 years, and how we all ride on the steps of that change. And if we could start with that summary, that'd be great.
I spent a lot of time trying to figure out. I mean, everybody knows that jobs are created and destroyed all the time, and I was trying to figure out if there was any pattern to it at all. And near as I could tell, I've spent a lot of time on this, the half-life of a job is about 50 years. And what that means is that every 50 years, we lose half of all of the jobs. And I think that's been going on for 300 years. I don't have a sense it's going any faster, even though a lot of people have been worried about it, about that happening. I used to host an AI podcast and over 5 years ago, and I had guests whose names you would know come on and say within 5 years, we're going to have all of this destruction of jobs from technology. And I don't know if you remember, but some years ago, they said they're going to automate the truck drivers, and then the diners are all going to go out of business, and the whole system will come crashing down. And in that time, I can't think of one single job we've eliminated. Not one. And so I do think technology steadily does destroy about half of them. I think it's about the best rate it can do. And then one would have to ask, well, wait a minute, if we're destroying 50% of all the jobs every half century, how do we maintain full employment, which this economy really has for centuries, essentially full employment and rising wages? And that's, I think, kind of the most interesting part, in that you can imagine that there in the economy, there's a wide range of jobs. There are high-skilled, high-pay, typically high-tech jobs, all the way down to their low-skilled, low-pay jobs, like a person who takes orders at a fast food restaurant. And what people say, and it is true, is that technology creates new jobs up at the top, like a geneticist. But the jobs that it destroys are on the other end, the low-pay, low-tech jobs, like the order taker at a fast food restaurant. And then people get worked up because they say, do you really think that order taker has the skills to be a geneticist? Or sometimes they say, can you really teach the coal miners how to code? And that isn't how it ever works. What happens is the geneticist job gets taken by a college biology professor. But, there's an opening at the college now, and they need a new professor. So they hired the high school biology teacher. Now there's an opening at the high school, so they hired the substitute teacher on full-time, all the way down the line. The question isn't, can the person whose job is eliminated do that new job at the top? The question is, can everybody do a job a little harder than the job they have today? And if the answer to that question is yes, which I think it is, then that's 250, 300 years of economic history. Technology creates jobs at the top, destroys them at the bottom, and we all ride that up. And I'll say just one final thing, which is I have a deep-held belief that if there is a job that a machine can do, a machine can do. In theory, a machine could do this job. If you make a person do that job, we have a word for that, and that word is dehumanizing. You're telling the person, look, a machine could do this job. I just don't own the machine. And I need you to be a machine and not a human being. And I think those are the jobs we want to build machines to eliminate. But if a machine can do it, it's beneath the dignity of a human being. And that we should not ever be worried that these jobs, that we're going to somehow eliminate all the jobs, because jobs are created out of thin air. They're created out of thin air because new technology increases productivity, and that productivity allows people to do more things. And so what is always the case is that when you see a new technology, you instantly can tell what it's going to destroy. But nobody has the imagination to tell what it's going to create. So in the early days of the internet, they said it's going to eliminate the yellow pages and the shopping malls and the travel agents and the stockbrokers, and it did all that. But nobody ever said there was going to be eBay, Etsy, Uber, Airbnb, and all these things that we couldn't conceive of. So that's what I think.
Oh, it's such a beautiful context. And, there's a couple of layers why that's so critical and why context matters, So, yeah, of course, on the one hand, we're all aware of the notions in, the new AI, the dystopian fears, but also the great possibilities, which is really what we're going to focus on in this podcast. You say in your fourth age, this is a new epoch for humanity. It is a social evolution step, potentially. So how do we firstly use this step in the next internet?
The great tragedy of human existence is that our society doesn't have a collective memory. But what happens is you spend 100 years learning all kinds of things, and then you die, and everything you knew is gone. Almost everything. Maybe you wrote some stuff down, but not all that much. But maybe a little survives. And before writing, progress was almost impossible because every generation you reset everything. You had to things had to be remembered and passed down. Then with writing, they got better. And then you get the internet where you can make more knowledge available to more people. And so you get something that looks like a memory. And then you get something like the LLMs, the ChatGPTs of the world and all of that. When what they're really trying to do is very interesting. They're trying to consolidate all the knowledge. When you do a Google search, what's the difference between a cold and the flu? Google says, I got 30 million answers for you. Here's the first one. But you only really want one. You want the right answer for you. And that's what those large language models are trying to do, is consolidate it. But what's coming is far bigger than that. And that is where artificial intelligence is a simple technology. It takes data about the past, it studies it and looks for patterns, uses those patterns to predict the future. That's really all it is. But it has to have data. And what we're doing is we're starting to attach sensors to everything. We don't know how many are attached right now that are gathering data all the time. Are there a trillion? Absolutely. How many there are, we don't know. And what is starting to happen is the passive actions of your life are starting to generate data, which every cause and effect, everything in its outcome. And with enough of those, we will enter a world where every person is effectively wiser than anyone who ever lived, because we're going to have this societal level memory of all these outcomes and actions. You're going to have a frying pan that has sensors in it. And why? Because those sensors can detect if there's botulism in your food. And you would want that frying pan. But that it's collecting data, and your spoon will know all the calories you ate. We just exist in the world, and our lives aren't generating useful information by and large. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to have this gigantic planetary-wide knowledge base of that. And if knowledge is power, this will be the thing that propels us to a whole new level. Every decision you just want to make, it can be informed by every decision everybody else ever made, and its outcome. And as I say, the last thing I'll say on this is, you still have agency in that world. Like if you go metal detecting at the beach, and you're swinging the metal detector around, and it goes beep, 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 beep. Look, you can dig anywhere on the beach you want. That's your business. And you can say to the metal detector, "You're not the boss of me. I'm going to go dig over there." But you're going to dig where it went beep, 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 because that's where the thing is. And we're going to have that. We're going to know the right answer to all of these things in life that we just don't know right now.
Yeah, what a marvelous summary. So you put your finger right on the pulse of where we're heading with the brain, because you started off by saying that we don't have a collective memory historically, and there's a reason for that, but we'll come to it. We talk about the brain. The brain was not evolved yet, particularly to be good at long-term anything, let alone long-term. So context is all collective memory is. So here is AI coming along. We're at our fingertips now. We have the potential to get distillations of information, collective memory, new patterns of the implications of those memories in a way that is just unimaginable. I mean, when I think of, for 40 years, I've been distilling things about the brain, and each distillation sometimes took weeks, months, actually, sometimes over those 40 years. And I was working literally every day in some ways. And yet here, I can go into ChatGPT and another example that I'll tell you about when we talk about the brain. And you've got it in minutes, the distillation. So context is going to be massively increased. So that's the upside. What is your skepticism about general artificial intelligence?
Well, I will start by saying, among people in the AI world, my viewpoint is an extreme minority of one. So I don't want to represent what I'm about to say as being speaking for anybody else. I would say my viewpoint is probably 5% maybe. But people who believe, so general intelligence, I'm sure your listeners all know, it's basically an AI that can, like what's in the movie, C-3PO or Commander Data. It can learn new things. It can teach itself new things. It's versatile and all of that. We don't know how to make that. There's 100% agreement on that. And I would say there's a lot of agreement that the existing techniques we have won't quite get you there. It won't get you there. It isn't like general intelligence is just what we have now, but more. So the people who believe it, though, believe it because they believe machines can have general intelligence, because they believe people are machines and people have general intelligence. And that's the open and shut case. I'll use the same exact example. They say, if I took you and scanned you a molecule at a time and then reconstructed it, that would have all your memories, and it would be you and all of that. And that's a philosophical viewpoint that I just don't hold to. But you don't have to actually believe in the soul or magical thinking or anything like that to hold that viewpoint. And what I like to do is say, and now I'm treading in the area that you have. I'm going to do a poor job compared to your writings, but we have these brains that we don't really understand how they work. When I ask you something like, who was your first grade teacher, or what color was your first bicycle, you can recall those almost immediately, even if you have not thought about it for 20 years. But there's not a bicycle location in your brain and a teacher location in your brain. So we do this amazing thing that we don't really understand. And then your brains give rise to something called the mind. And the mind is everything that you can do that it doesn't seem like an organ should be able to do. For instance, you have a sense of humor. Your heart does not have a sense of humor. Your stomach does not have a sense of humor, but your brain somehow does. And none of your cells have a sense of humor. So you get these emergent properties that we don't know how they come about. But that's not all either. Along the way, something transformative happens, which is you become conscious. People say we don't know what consciousness is, and that's not true. We know exactly what it is. We just do not know how it is that matter can have experiences. What it is the experience of the universe. A thermometer can measure temperature, but you can feel warmth. And that difference, that is the mystery. You're made of the same exact elements that thermometer is made out of, and yet you experience the world, whereas the thermometer can merely measure it. And so we have brains we don't understand that give rise to minds we don't understand that somehow produce consciousness, which we don't understand. And so for people to say, however, we're going to be able to manufacture that in a fab, I just don't have that much faith. I don't know where that follows. I think the burden of proof is heavily on people who believe we could manufacture consciousness, in a fab, and I believe it to be incredibly unproven, to say the least. But I honestly think it's impossible. And it's really funny. The word impossible, if you do the Google term usage over the last several centuries, its usage goes down all the time. And so I think the drawer full of things that are actually impossible is very small. Traveling back in time is probably impossible. And I think general intelligence is. I think your mother was right. You are a miracle. And there's no way around it.
Yeah, it's really interesting because you are quite rare in being someone who has been so at the center of thought in this entire field. And so I'll just make one observation from a brain point of view. So, of course, there are many things in the sort of, if you look at the hierarchy of brain function, from sensory, motor, skills, all those levels of decision-making and decision integration. There are absolutely ways in which computers will be faster, more accurate, more effective than human brains by orders of magnitude in their own way. But what has surprised me in this question is the speed with which people who seem never to have studied the brain, as your point about collective memory, no context. So there's a lot of hubris, in my view, about this issue where people are assuming that the extrapolated integrative power that they're seeing along the key basic primary sensory, motor, coordination, basic decision-making, integrating information, that same huge successes, remarkable, brilliant successes in AI are naturally going to translate to the very top of that hierarchy. And when I look back, as I want to spend my lifetime just analyzing the landscape of the mind, and I look firstly just at the evolutionary brilliance and hundreds of years of knowledge and information coded in that DNA as a start, and then extrapolate that to all the multiple dimensions of the brain as a dynamical system and its incredible ability to see patterns at both a non-conscious and conscious level, and the amount of information that's in those 100 trillion connections. But the main thing that I see at the top of this is meaning, sentience, purpose, adaptation with the purpose. I mean, these are concepts where I think because the collective memory about the brain is so poor and so siloed and so specialized and so poorly thought that people just assume that the computer's fast enough and it's powerful enough and it's going to do that. There is we haven't even spent the energy and time as a society to even deconstruct the main elements of the top of the pyramid of the brain, let alone assume computers can do it. I think it's a big stretch at this point to think that there's any cause for the same optimism and high-fiving about AI as there is for general AI. So interesting times. Let's end off on the central question. It's a question that I think is going to bedevil us for a long time to come in AI, and that is, we can see already there are legitimate fears. I mean, if you think about the marvelous idea of Steve Jobs of giving us, a bicycle for the mind, what a marvelous idea. And there are a lot of people who used it very effectively. But I don't know if he would have imagined how many people would have taken that bicycle for the mind and turned it into, I don't know, Harley Davidson, and driven it off the cliff into incredible polarizations of them and us in all sorts of levels, in all sorts of ways, incredible addictions of short-term and shortcuts because that's what the brain does worst, short-term shortcut. And it's the long-term potential thinking is there, but it's still the last thing to evolve and the least thing to be integrated. So how do you think that we can use these AI patterns you particularly have summarized and we've mentioned today to help the brain use AI more effectively?
Well, I would say when you understand what machines can do and how that's different than what people can do, you get an intuitive, you take everything in your life a machine can do and you let the machine do it. And to have a non-mechanistic view of humanity, that we are something different. But I'm actually far more interested in how you're going to answer that question. I mean, here you are at the beginning of this series. Do you already have, what are your thoughts on the question? Because those are far more interesting than mine, I'm sure.
Well, they're not more interesting. Your context in this field is just remarkable. Look, I'll try and summarize it very briefly. They just nascent ideas, but they're basically striking to me that AI can bring together the past and the present of all information in real time. And that empowerment can be harnessed by many innovators into a part of the antidote to combat the clickbait media's bombardment of fear and FOMO and the tech bros' attempt at controlled centralization of AI. It's a challenging time. Steve Jobs gave us a bicycle for the mind. I don't know. AI has now added a quantum computer for the brain. And that cocktail will escalate both enlightenment and fracture. I have confidence that the sentience, the meaning, and the purpose that separates human brains from machines will prevail. On this big picture level, AI provides a doorway to context and information about everything that is known. And that includes deeper insights into how our brains work, which will help us better use AI constructively. 40 years ago, when I set up the first international database on the human brain to kind of connect all the information about the brain and behavior, I never imagined an epoch where AI would make it possible really to connect all the brain databases in the world and shed light on the replicated findings globally. My opinion of 3 more specific AI benefits to the brain are, firstly, AI-empowered insights could help all learning institutions to better communicate critical thinking. It's top-down, bottom-up details, emotion and intuition versus rational thinking, just bringing it all together. Secondly, AI can help shed light on our over 100 biases and how to constantly challenge our confirmation bias and our biases like the them-us bias, which imperils the planet. And thirdly, and probably most importantly, we can use the AI co-pilot to present us with the most validated information by seeking data that has convergence, from multiple sources, data that has been replicated, and, the highest level of information rather than, opinion and anecdote, and data that provides us with the source references that we can verify ourselves. In my opinion, it is self-limiting to trust anything in AI, or anyone's belief or opinion for that matter, until you have cross-checked and verified it from multiple highest level referenced sources. And ironically, AI can be set up to help do that efficiently. So that's my long answer to your short question, but that's where it's at this point in my thinking.
And how long is the series going to be? How many?
For the applied integrated neuroscience, I just looked at the essence. So I don't want it to be longer than 5, of which you're the first for good reason, as you would understand. And then next week I have Gary Bowles and people that I know are
He's
just
wonderful.
major international influencers. A five maximum,
Perfect.
and then distill that and hopefully use that as part of a meme to push it out into whoever wants to see it and sort of use that distillation.
Well, you're definitely asking the right question, which is essentially, how can we use this technology to make us better people? And I mean, that is the question that preoccupies our time. So I will be listening attentively.